Today, watch for the signs with Robert Kiyosaki. Robert Kiyosaki, thank you very much for coming back on the DFA show. Last time we spoke a little bit about people taking personal responsibility for their finances, but today I want to talk about your perspective in terms of where the economy is, where it's headed, and what people need to be thinking about.
Well, that's a big question you're asking me.
Well, financial guru.
Well, I think the biggest news, which validates what Harry's been saying and I've been saying, because Harry and I have been kind of lone wolves, howling out in the wilderness. But the big news was that it was just revealed, because you guys heard, that Warren Buffett has dumped all banking shares and is taking a small position in Barrick Gold. So the question is it's not what he says, and he hasn't given any interviews on this, but why in the world would he be dumping banking shares? That's the question. And the other people that I subscribe to or listen to, the question is, are we on the verge of a banking crisis or a collapse? And the reason I say that is most of my work started in 1972 when I was flying in Vietnam for the US Marine Corps. And my rich dad sent me a letter that says, hey, look out, President Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. So that was a big move back then. How 20 years later, Buffett dumps all banking shares. So if I was a human, an investor or a person worried about the future right now, I'd be wondering, what does Buffett's move mean? Because if he's getting out of banks, that's not good.
Right. And of course, we know that the financial system has been propped up by the central bank money printing in a number of countries, including, of course, in the Fed in the US. And a lot of that has gone back into the financial system. So we've got a rather artificial perspective. And yet stocks are raging to all-time highs.
You're very kind with the word artificial. How about manipulated, corrupt? I don't trust it. And as most people know, the more they manipulate it, the worse it's going to get when it finally collapses. And so the higher, if you have a house of cards and the foundation is weak, don't add anything more to it. But I think because we have an election coming up with President Trump versus Biden, they're going to just keep that house of cards up in the sky. So in many ways, it's bad news, but also it's good news if you're paying attention and you're watching what Buffett is doing, not what he's saying. And that's my message at this moment.
Right. So essentially, we need to be watching for those signs. And I guess perhaps not necessarily taking everything at face value. So, for example, the mainstream media is still relatively bullish and positive, and the COVID is under control, etc., etc. And there's probably a need to get more informed and to really ask some hard questions.
Right. Like I said, Harry's been calling for gold to go to 1,000 in the U.S. And other people like Jim Rickards are calling for 15,000 an ounce. And I'm kind of, I like to listen to both sides. And I like to listen to both sides' logic and arguments. And somewhere I make up my own mind in there. And the question is, what's your solution? Personally, what are you going to do personally? Well, personally right now, is because I was prepared for this, I've never made so much money, because financial education, my book sales, my game sales, and all that are way through the roof right now. And thank you, all my customers out there. I appreciate it. But with people locked at home and they're ready to kill each other, it might be better to play a board game like Cash Flow, and you can learn about money or read a book or something. But another thing about property is really funny. So why are people moving? Is because all the kids are in the same house. They need to find a bigger place. So I thought, I understand. So anyway, this change is everywhere. And the question is, what are you going to do? And that's why Harry and I speak. And Harry has his answers. And I do my best to be more neutral on the whole thing, but just pay attention to the signs, you know.
Yeah, I think that's right. And of course, the home sales in the US were quite strong. It's probably the strongest for many years, which is your theory about there needing a bigger place could well be could well be right. But it is important, isn't it, to take both a short-term perspective and a longer-term perspective. What I mean by that is there are people who are essentially traders by nature and speculative by nature, and there are people who are probably more worried about asset protection and long-term wealth protection. Those are rather different schools, aren't they?
Yeah, and they're very important schools. You know, like it's like for me, I've been buying gold since '73, and I paid $50 for a Krugerrand. And today, my favorite place on planet Earth is the Perth Mint, where I buy kangaroos. Yeah, but Harry would disagree with that. But my basis in gold is so low. I've been buying gold at $300 and stuff like this, so it goes up and down. I don't really care. The difference is I use debt to finance, and I use debt as money. Now Harry doesn't do that. So what we'll be talking about in our future talks and all this is my formula and Harry's formula and Jim Rickard's formula. The most important lesson is I think you better find your formula pretty quick. Because Aussie, you guys have been in a boom for 30 years. You've had no recession, and the higher it goes, the harder they fall. So it's really a time to be cautious. And Aussie really is the lucky country. It really is. I think you guys live in the best place on earth, sincerely. But your economy and your government are run by lunatics. I mean. They make Chairman Mao look like a conservative person, a capitalist. You have some real communists running your economy. Just like Hawaii. I'm from Hawaii, and they should raise the Chinese flag there. I had to leave because I refused to wear a Mao suit.
Well, there are certainly people here in Australia who are scratching their heads a bit with regard to recent developments in terms of, even things like human rights and those things. But if you look at the economy and what's happened here, it's been very much a story of the property sector driving everything, strong migration driving everything. And of course, the trouble is we've now got property that's way overpriced relative to all the ratios you might think. And now we're starting to see the cracks because unemployment is rising. And yet the government is suggesting that people should go in and buy property now, and here are some extra incentives for the construction sector. It's like nobody's understood the lesson.
Correct. And that's why we all know there's up and down, and my concern is it's the U.S. government and the U.S. Treasury, the U.S. Fed, that has been propping up the world right now. And in 2008, I know that many of your banks, the Commonwealth Bank, was bailed out by the Fed, the U.S. Fed. And your superannuations and all that are filled with toxic American assets. And so when I speak, I'm not a popular speaker, but I'm also not like Warren Buffett saying, invest for the long term. Because I said what he says and what he does. I mean, people should know this, that Buffett was the guy that insured the crash of 2008. His company called Moody's. He's not a bad man, but he's doing what he's paid to do. And what Harry and I do are saying we just kind of warn people to watch it, what they're doing. But Harry's been saying this for so many years. I've been saying it since probably 84, 83, that era. And I've been buying gold and silver, and so I'm ready for it. Just waiting for
And it's interesting because some of the comments that we get after we show your shows and Harry's shows is, well, they've been saying it for so long, what's different this time? And I guess there are 2 points to make there. Well, what is different partly is time, because effectively the seeds of the problem were laid a long time ago, and it's taken a long time to work through, and they've been throwing more and more money at this, so it's not surprising that it's taken a lot longer to get to this point. But secondly, we've also, of course, had the economic impact from the virus and all of the consequences of that in terms of higher unemployment. So it's almost now a perfect storm, isn't it?
Correct. And the blessing or not, the blessing or the curse for Aussie is China. I mean, you guys are a resource exporter, and as long as Chinese were making a lot of money, so is Aussie. But as Trump and Xi go to war, well, that affects Aussie. And I think that's kind of the thing you got to watch out for. I think the other thing is technology. Technology replaces people. And just the other day, a truck company says they'll have driverless trucks on the roads in 2021. Well, in America, that's 3 million drivers who are out of work. And then their families, and then the business, the ripple effect around 3 million drivers, plus Zoom. What you and I are doing now is going to put school teachers out of work. I mean, my friends were just laughing. They said, my kids sit at home on Zoom, and the teachers have no idea what those kids are doing. They're cheating, lying, stealing, texting. I said, if I was 15 years old, I was sitting in front of a Zoom camera right now trying to listen to some boring teacher. I don't know where I'd be, but they said they've invented surrogate students in front of the screens and all this stuff. They have the cheat sheets right in front of them. The teachers can't control these kids.
Well, it's certainly very interesting to watch, youngsters particularly using technology. But your broader point is, I think, very important that there is a technological wave continuing to develop, and it's changing a lot of things. And that's one reason why, of course, the tech stocks are very high relative to other stocks at the moment. But the unintended consequences of all that need to be understood too, because that's another factor you've got to bring into your thinking in terms of as you prepare in terms of both wealth protection and indeed investments ahead. Again, it's about being informed. It's about understanding the full picture, the big picture, rather than just taking those high-level stories, be they from the media or where else, right? Do the work is what I keep saying to people.
Right, and that's hard because, it's hard to watch what we don't see a lot of things. And, and as Ozzy knows, if America catches a cold or sneezes, you guys get pneumonia or COVID. So this election coming up, I'm generally not very political. Trump is a friend of mine, but even he's had to print money. And I think that's the thing I watch out for, is how come we're printing trillions. Yeah. Airlines are going down, banks are going to go down, and are we going to bail them out? So the thing I love about Ozzy is you have a tremendous spirit, in sport and all that. You guys are unstoppable. I think, and then in combat, when I was in Vietnam, we had such respect for the Aussie and Kiwi fighters. When you guys came into fight, you came to fight. But on the other side of it, Aussies have very big hearts. And that's why kind of a socialistic state, and things like this. And unfortunately, the more you give people money, they want more money. And I think the snowball effect from this quote unquote COVID thing is accelerating. Problems are already a long time on the way. And so that's why when Harry and I speak, Harry has his formula and I have my formula. And I think people should listen. Not that either of us is right, but somewhere in between is your formula.
Great. Well, the final conversation on that series is on Sunday. We'll put the links below. And I know Harry's on, you're on, I'm on. And we'll all be giving our perspectives in terms of the things that people should be thinking about. But,
right.
Yeah. And I want to thank you for your words of wisdom and caution to people. And, once again, we're not claiming we know all the answers, but at least we know what some of the questions should be.
Right. You've got to pay attention, be much more aware. The world has changed so dramatically in the last 5 years. It's shocking. It's shocking. So anyway, as I always say, Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. You'll do well. You'll do well. The Aussie spirit will come through.
Thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. And keep safe and keep watching for those signs.
Thank you. That's it. That's the answer.
Take care. Bye-bye.